Hello and welcome everyone to Natural Talk with Angel. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Today's guest is Daniel Locke. He is with Compassionate Alternative Care here in Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you for being with us today.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Daniel is going to be talking to us today about medical marijuana. And so I don't know about everybody out there in the viewing world, but I do know that I've had several people talk to me about medical marijuana. And I know when it was on the ballot, a lot of people were coming to me asking, because, you know, I do a lot of things with herbs. Are you going to do that? I was like, no, I don't think so. So we're going to leave that to people like Daniel and his practice where they know what they're doing. So Daniel, good morning and thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice?
Well, we are a family-owned practice. What I like to tell folks that separate us from the other, some of the other folks in town is we are family-owned. I obviously run the day-to-day operations, and my wife is the physician who comes in and sees patients. So that we've got a little bit more feel to it by being involved with the day-to-day operations. All we do is medical marijuana. Okay, sometimes you have to be to be able to recommend folks for medical marijuana. You have to be an MD or a DO. Okay, so some folks are bringing this into their practice. Some pain practices are bringing this in addition to the shots and the opioids and what have you. They're also bringing in medical marijuana. There are a handful of family practice folks that are looking at it, but what sets us apart is we run the day-to-day operation and all we focus on is medical marijuana. That's what we do. We've been at it since November of last year. So it had been in existence for about a year in Florida before we got into the medical marijuana industry.
Wow. Okay. Let me start off by asking you a couple of questions that I've gotten from some of my viewers.
Sure.
Is it addictive? Is marijuana addictive? I mean, the stigma to it in the past has been that it was a drug.
Sure.
And, would be like a gateway drug into something else. So
right.
How would you answer that?
Well, what we've been conditioned for the last 50 years, all of us, by our government and folks alike, is that it is the gateway drug. But what's realistic and what sadly we've seen is the opioids are the gateway drugs. Sadly, they're the gateway drugs to heroin, where so many folks are ending up and losing their life. But medical marijuana and opioids, they both enter the brain in different receptors. Okay, I'm going to try to put this in layman's terms because that's about the best way I can describe it. When you take opioids, the receptors that it travels through the brain, those receptors have a tendency to clog up. Okay, that's the reason that opioids are so addictive, because as those receptors clog up, we need more and more opioids to get the same relief that we got yesterday, hence the addiction. Medical marijuana actually enters the brain in different receptors. Those receptors don't clog up. Okay, so therefore you don't get addicted to marijuana, not physically. Now, the thought of being high, the feeling of being high can have a physiological effect that folks might want to gravitate to, but it's not addictive. Like if you were to try to get off of marijuana the same way you were off opioids, you wouldn't go through all the harsh, what am I trying to, you
froze.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
You had frozen up there for a second.
Okay.
Go ahead. We're good now.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why medical marijuana is not addictive as opioids are, the different receptors.
So
Okay.
this is something then that will help somebody. Let's say that someone has an opioid addiction.
Uh-huh.
Are they able to go to you then get on the medical marijuana and it helps them to get off of the opioids, or is this something they still need to go like through a drug rehab program and stuff before they would do this?
Yeah. Well, we're not drug rehab folks. Okay. We're not qualified to help people get off of the opioids. That's not what we do. So we would never tell somebody, hey, come to us. Don't go deal with that process with the physicians who are trained to do that. What we are getting are those type of physicians who are trying to help wean patients off. They're sometimes referring medical marijuana, are speaking to their patients about that, because once they get them weaned off of the opioids, they still got to deal with the chronic pain. Most of them got on the opioids because of the chronic pain that they're dealing with. So yes, what they're able to do with us is come learn how to deal with that chronic pain with medical marijuana treatment. And many patients have, this is an example of different patients we have. We have patients who are on opioids who are trying to get off of opioids. We've got patients who used to be on opioids come to us and say, hey, I'm not on them anymore. And then we also have patients who don't do opioids because they're afraid of them. They just live with the chronic pain. So yes, so that's, I guess to answer your question, we are in assistance to helping folks get off the opioids. And every single day I hear it from patients. I hear it from patients who have self-medicated themselves off of it before they even got their medical marijuana card. So yeah, I mean, it is very effective for chronic pain, but it's not going to be something that is going to help you with withdrawals or something of that nature from opioids. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that did. So then another question that was on here was about other drugs beyond opioids. Is this something that helps with that? So really, this is more like for pain, or does it help with other things?
Okay, that's a great question. One of the things that aren't talked about, which are as large or maybe even a larger problem in America, are the benzos. Okay, because people are able to, kind of live with them. But we've got as many people getting off of the Xanax for anxiety as we do getting off of opioids for chronic pain. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's amazing. We had clinic last week and a lady came in. Now, this is a lady who was not able to drive here at specific times because her anxiety was so bad. Okay. She came into our office for a follow-up. She slammed her bottle of pills on the table. She said, here, flush them. Haven't had a Xanax in 90 days. Don't need them. I hear these stories daily. And honey, when you hear them daily, you just want to shout it from the mountaintop. It's amazing what it's doing. So with anxiety, okay, which is the most common two of the top things that we treat, PTSD, anxiety is associated with PTSD, and chronic pain. Okay, those are probably 95% of folks that have medical marijuana cards in Florida. Okay, and what most people aren't aware of is with the anxiety, THC can actually cause anxiety. Okay, so those patients are doing a CBD regimen. Okay, CBD is non-mind altering. And it's amazing for anxiety. I mean, it has got folks just putting the benzos down and solely on non-mind altering CBD. That leads me to another common question. Oh, I can get CBD from the health store. I can buy it online. Which one of these are good CBDs? My answer to that is we don't know. Okay, the difference between the over-the-counter CBD and the medical grade CBD is like a watered down cup of coffee versus espresso. Okay, the over-the-counter CBD comes from hemp, where the medical grade comes directly from cannabis. Okay, so I hear some people say, oh, well, I used the over-the-counter stuff and it worked. Well, good. I mean, that's great if it has. But then, I've also heard where it didn't work so good, or, but when it comes to the medical grade CBD and anxiety, there is nothing better for it.
Okay. Well, that kind of touches on another question that I had, was like, what was the difference between a marijuana CBD and a hemp CBD?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that kind of touches on that.
Yeah, and just so you'll know, when the marijuana plant, if you can just picture a mother plant, she had two offspring. Okay, one offspring was cannabis, and the other offspring was hemp. Hemp is a very industrial product, and it's great for fibers, but it just grew differently and didn't have the medicinal properties that the cannabis does.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. And also, I guess, because I do know that there's more of a cost involved with getting the medical marijuana, and there's more, oh my gosh, like rules to follow. You can't just walk in off the street and say, "Hey, give me a card. I want this." Right. So maybe a hemp may be good for those people who cannot get a card but have some kind of issue.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. That would be fine. Yeah. But most of the people who were buying it had the issue that probably qualifies them for medical marijuana anyway.
Okay. And then, so that leads me to my next question here is, what type of medical conditions are approved for medical marijuana?
Okay. So let me just grab my little list here so I don't butcher any of them. Let's see. The qualifying conditions are, you're going to get to see me how old I am with my glasses. Cancer, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV, AIDS, PTSD, ALS, Crohn's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis. Medical conditions of the same kind or class as or comparable to those listed above. Okay, that's where anxiety qualifies because it's associated with PTSD. Okay, and then chronic malignant pain caused by qualifying medical condition, or that originates from a qualifying medical condition and persists beyond the usual course of that qualifying medical condition. In other words, you've had 19 back surgeries and you're always going to be dealing with chronic pain. That's somebody who qualifies. So yeah, those are the qualifying conditions. They can obviously, they can be found on anybody's website, and medical marijuana, they probably explain that. But like I say, 95% of folks have chronic pain or anxiety. That's our biggest qualifiers.
So that was a pretty extensive list there of different issues that would qualify for that. So is there any one specific disease that you're seeing, or diseases that you're seeing more success than over others?
Well, because of, I guess, the word of mouth, because of the type of patients, like I, touched on, the anxiety and the chronic pain are the majority of what I'm seeing. However, here lately, we've been getting a ton of Crohn's patients. Because, this is, I learn a lot of stuff from our patients, and our patient, one of my patients was explaining that the doctor had him on one drug, and then he, wasn't quite helping with his stomach the way he wanted it to be. So he prescribed another drug. Well, and he said, I just didn't feel real comfortable with that other drug. So I'm here trying medical marijuana. He qualified, we got him certified. So I called the patient the other day just to check and see how it was working. He said, I never did take that other drug that the doctor said. I said, have you talked to your doctor about it? And he said, no, I'm going back. He said, I'm going to let him know. I've been afraid to kind of talk to him and let him know that I'm doing medical marijuana. And, I encourage everybody, let your physician know, so they can take it into consideration. So what's happening now is more and more patients are going back and telling their doctors, hey, guess what? I'm doing this now and it's working. So now I'm starting to actually get physicians who are saying, hey, we're hearing that this is working. You might want to give it a try. So it's been more, it's almost like the patients are educating the doctors now, because your doctor didn't learn any of this in med school. They didn't discuss it not one day in med school. And, you know, I have patients that, you know, I've got a cancer patient that just swears by what's, you know, the quality of life that medical marijuana has given him. And he swears, he says, listen, he goes, I'm telling you, he goes, they're prescribing these pills. They don't want me doing medical marijuana because they're making money off of these things. Well, that's not really the case anymore. You know, a physician's going to lose their license if they're taking kickbacks from, you know, that's kind of 1990s. It's more, you know, because I happen to live with a doctor, it's more that they just were never taught it. You know, they were taught science. This is science, and if science doesn't back it up, then I don't have, so it's not that your doctor is against it necessarily. More than likely, it's just because your doctor's been trained that they're the smartest people in the world. You know, they're the top 1%, smartest folks. But that doesn't mean they always come with a whole lot of common sense to go with it. So really, we've got patients educating doctors. That's what's happening.
And the bottom line is they don't know what they don't know. So if they didn't learn it in medical school, which the pharmaceutical company pays for a lot of the medical training facilities and things like that. So they're not going to teach them things that are going to take money out of their pocket.
Exactly.
What is the age range of your patients that take medical marijuana?
Believe it or not, my average age is 58 years old at this time. My oldest patient's 87, you know, and then we've got some that have, you know, PTSD, you know, veterans that have come that kind of balance out the age, you know, sadly 25, 30 years old, we're getting a lot of PTSD patients. But the average age is 58 years old right now for us.
Now, is this something that children can take? Like, you know, I've heard that it's really good for ADD and ADHD, and then there, you've got, of course, children that have some really life-altering diseases.
Sure.
Is this something that a child would be eligible to take if they're medically needy?
Good question. Yes, ma'am. Listen, there's some benefits. You know, you talked about the ADHD and what have you. Those are things that, you know, might can fall under the anxiety. I'm not exactly positive of that one, to be honest with you. We don't see children. Okay. Not that you're allowed to get certified as a child, but it requires 2 physicians. So normally a practice that has multiple physicians in it, they're doing that. So there are physicians out there that are seeing children. But, you know, I know that it works for some of these things because of all the research, and, you know, obviously they've been doing this in California for 2 decades now. So we've got a lot of research of what it's doing for patients. But yes, ma'am, to answer your question, it's great. I mean, if it were my child and my child had some of these issues, I promise you we would try medical marijuana before we try all these other harsh drugs.
Well, having said that, then that would then kind of almost answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. About toxins in the medications. Are there any toxins or anything like that that you have to be concerned about when taking medical marijuana?
Yeah, well, there are certain dispensaries. You know, one of the most common forms of ingestion of medical marijuana is the vape pens. You know, we've all seen the vapes and seen people running around with little vape pens. That's the most common way to ingest it. Check with your dispensary. Okay, we have 4 dispensaries now in Jacksonville. Check with your dispensary. Some of the dispensaries put some filler in there and some do not. Okay, so, and some of it is, you know, some people are using coconut oil, which I just, you know, read something about coconut oil maybe even having some issues with folks. But it's best to use, in my opinion, it's best to use a product like Surterra, for example. Okay, they really take a medical approach And I don't mind giving them a little plug. They really take a very medical approach. And when they extract their product, they do it with CO2. So there's no filler in it at all. So I don't know if there's going to be any long-term effects on any of the fillers. We just don't know that answer yet.
So then vaping medical marijuana would still, like, you know, there's a big to-do out there right now with vaping, not necessarily marijuana, but just in general, causing wet lung and people's lungs collapsing and things like that. So that would still probably be an issue even with the medical marijuana, just because of whatever else they have to do to create it in a vape.
Well, there's the stuff that people are utilizing to take the place of cigarettes.
Right.
That's got some other properties in it. Okay, the stuff that is being utilized in medical marijuana doesn't have those same properties. I can't break it down and explain it to you. It's been told to me the differences. I'd probably butcher it if I started trying to explain what the differences are, but it's not the same. Okay, the vape from the medical marijuana doesn't have all the same stuff in it that the cigarette vape replacement does. And if you notice, when somebody is vaping a tobacco, a liquid tobacco, when they hit the vape, and there's a great big cloud of smoke. Okay,
Yes.
we've seen that kid walking down the street, and that looks like a cloud behind him. When you vape the medical marijuana, it's a little puff. I don't know what the difference is in making a little puff versus the great big cloud of smoke, but one looks healthier than the other.
So one of my questions was, where do you get your medical marijuana? But after talking to you, I'm kind of getting the idea that you don't necessarily have it there, that you maybe write a prescription and they go to a dispensary to have it filled.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The word prescription is actually illegal in our industry. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And that's okay. I mean, that's what everybody thinks, but it's our doctor will give you, or the patient, the certification, meaning, hey, you have one of the qualifying conditions. I've verified it. I've talked to you. I've seen you face to face. You can qualify for the card. The way the law is written in the state, you, the patient, actually have control over your treatment. Now, there are physician groups who, I've heard of a few that want to tell people, you're going to take this, you're going to do that, you're going to do. No, what we do is we educate, and we try to keep, as up to speed on everything that's changing on a daily basis, which is changing on a daily basis. Okay. So I don't understand how anybody can do medical marijuana in any other practice, because it's a full-time job. But the difference is, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. Ask me again. What did you just say?
We were talking about if you write a prescription and send them to the dispensary.
Yeah. Thank you. So it is a recommendation. Yeah, it is a recommendation. But what we do is we'll try to explain to you, this is what's working for other patients. We get feedback from patients. We get feedback from the folks at the dispensaries. The dispensaries have manufacturers reps who try to keep us in tune to this stuff, just like the old drug reps. So it's, with the experience and recommendations, we'll tell them what is working for other folks. Okay. But we don't tell them exactly what to use. We'll ask them how they prefer to ingest it. They have multiple ways that they can ingest it. We can, you've got orally, you've got inhalation, you've got topical. So we'll ask the patients, what all ways do you want? And that's what we'll put in the system, so they're able to go purchase those type of products. Does that make sense?
So it does make sense. Yeah. And it leads me into another question. I've got lots.
No, that's fine. That's all I know about.
Is there a difference in the potency of the different types of ways that you can take them?
There absolutely is. Yes, ma'am. And what we do, I've got 4 different patients. I put them in categories. I've got the patient who's 65 years old who never tried marijuana a day in their life. They are green naive or THC naive, okay? Then I have the second patient. That patient, 65 years old, and they tried it 25 years ago, but haven't done it since. I got the third patient. Third patient says, hey, I've been doing this on the black market, and I know this works, okay? And then I got the fourth patient. I call that fourth one Willie Nelson. I don't have to educate Willie Nelson on anything. I don't have to put any fears in Willie Nelson because Willie stays high, okay? So depending on where you fall in that category as a patient is what we might recommend where you get going. So if you're in that first category, okay, and you're fighting chronic pain, here's what most folks aren't aware of. You have to have, because I've had people come in and say, you know, I smoked some pot and it really didn't work for my pain. Well, that's because the stuff in the streets has been engineered to be super high THC. They didn't care about CBD. The problem is to fight chronic pain, you have to have what's called the entourage effect. You have to have CBD in your system and then THC with it for chronic pain. So that patient who's never done it before, we encourage them to start off with a good heavy regimen of CBD. Make sure that's in your system, okay? Then sometimes that'll be enough for the chronic pain. You know, we all have different pain levels. Sometimes just the CBD, the non-mind altering CBD can be enough for patients. But then we'll say, okay, well, here's what we encourage you to do. Get on a nice regimen of CBD and then get some THC. Start low and slow. And then when you're home and in the evening and you don't necessarily have to go anywhere, maybe, you know, have your grandkids around who've done it since you have, okay? And then let grandma try the THC, you know, where she's not going to have a little panic attack. Most of the time, she's going to go to bed pretty quick. She's going to go right to sleep. Okay, so what we tell, because a lot of times we have patients with anxiety and chronic pain, because chronic pain can cause anxiety, right? So we ask those patients to keep full regimen of CBD, and then in the evening when you're ready to go to bed, they have called a pure reserve oil. It's like pine tar, okay, and it squeezes out of a syringe, and 0.5 milliliter is all you need as a dose. Well, now that is going to get in your system in about 2 hours. So we'll have that patient, encourage that patient to, you know, come in the evening time, you're ready to go to bed, you can't sleep at night because the pain keeps you up. We encourage them to use a little bit of THC with the vape, if they can handle that, and then they're going to go to sleep in 10 minutes. Well, right before you do the vape, you would do the pure reserve oil. So the vape's going to wear off in 1.5 hours or so. About that time, the reserve oil is going to kick in and carry you through the night and allow you to sleep. So, so there's a very scientific way to treat yourself with medical marijuana. It's not just go grab the stuff and get after it. You know, it's grab the stuff and here are the things that are working for your type condition. And with your THC naivety level, you know, that's basically how you have to balance that out for folks.
Let me ask you this as well. This, you know, what I do with my business is something that I'm hoping to be able to use it to catapult me into retirement. So I have a full-time job. I drive tractor trailer for FedEx Express.
Wow.
And yeah, but with that, I have, you know, a Class A CDL, and with that comes regular mandatory drug testing and things like that. And there are a lot of other people out there that are in the same boat as me that, you know, we have a lot of pain from getting in and out of these tractors and loading and unloading trailers and, you know, just the physical aspect of it. But we are drug tested. Right. So is medical marijuana an option for those of us who would have to be drug tested?
Very good question. What I tell folks like you is, the only thing I can tell you is what I would do. I would run it by my HR department. Okay. And, you know, I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to pop positive. I'm not going to tell you even with CBD. I've had people say, not my patients, but I've heard through the grapevine, oh, I did CBD and I popped positive. Okay. So I don't know how true that is. All right. But I'm not going to be the one to tell you that you're safe from that. Okay. Like I said, I encourage folks. I'll give you a great example. Got a lady over in, she works for the forestry system. Okay. She's in a little rural area. I shouldn't even probably say this. Anyway, she's got such a bad condition that her HR department okayed her to do it and the company paid for it. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. But, you know, she's got multiple sclerosis. Okay. And the side effects, I mean, you know, I don't know the answer to this. I'd love some feedback from all of you. Okay. If you do go to your HR department and hear what was said, you know, I'd love that feedback, because my thought is, okay, would you want me to do these opioids and potentially become a heroin addict? Or would you prefer me do some non-mind altering CBD? Do you want me eating 6 Xanax a day and walking around this place like a zombie? Or do you want me on some non-mind altering CBD? Okay, I mean, it logically, I mean, we can all answer the question, but can you get the person at the HR department to go make a case with corporate? And, you know, I don't know those answers, but that is a great question. And I'm curious to how it's going to, I mean, I know if I owned a company, if I had a bunch of employees that I was drug testing, I wouldn't want to open myself up for a potential lawsuit one day. You know?
Well, and I will put that out there to my viewers as well. If anybody has an answer to that question, please feel free to put it in the comments below this post. Let us know what you know out there.
Well, maybe we got an HR director out there.
Right. Also, insurance. Is this something that insurance covers?
No, currently it does not. Okay, I'll give a plug for, oh goodness, forgot her last name, Nikki. Nikki, if you hadn't voted yet, vote for Nikki. She is, if she gets elected, she will probably mandate that the insurance companies in the state of Florida cover medical marijuana. They just did it in New Jersey. In New Jersey, they've mandated, that's a state by state insurance regulation. So no, not currently, it does not cover it, but it would be great if it did.
So for everyone out there who wants to see this covered by insurance, make sure to go to the polls and vote for Nikki.
Nikki's last name, I forgot it now, but
if it comes to him, we'll post it underneath this video.
God, isn't it great to interview somebody with half informations?
No, you're doing good. Actually, you've been very informative. And here's a question that someone had asked, and so I'm going to pose it to you. I think I probably already know this answer, but we're going to let the experts tell us. Can you travel with medical marijuana? So, you know, it's not approved in all states. So,
very good question. Okay. There are some states that will allow you to bring in your medical marijuana. I don't know those states. You'd have to, maybe before you traveled, I would encourage you to call them. And then I've had questions about, what about on the plane? You know, I'm trying to fly to, well, let's say I'm flying to Colorado and they have medical marijuana. Okay. Can I take my vape pen on the plane with me? Okay, that's a question for the airports. That's a question to pick up the phone and call the local airports where you're flying in and flying out of and ask those questions. It's a case-by-case basis. There are places that will allow you to fly with it. There are states that will allow you to come in with it. There are states that will honor your medical marijuana card in their state. You know, Nevada, for example. You take your Florida medical marijuana card, they're going to honor it there. But
Well, you got to keep
vice
what their
versa, they're not going to honor it
happens
here.
here stays here.
Uh,
I said Nevada, they got to keep what happens here stays here. So, well, and then I'm going to ask you one final question, and it is one that somebody had heard about, and it was about if it was true that smoking the medical marijuana was 7 times as harmful as smoking a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about it. You were saying that most people vape. So are there people, though, that actually still like roll it up like something they would smoke off of the street?
Good question. Okay, so in Florida, just so you'll know, that we refer to that as flower, okay, the actual buds. And in Florida, the governor, when they rolled it out, they didn't roll out flower, okay? Morgan & Morgan sued them, Morgan & Morgan won, and then the governor has just, I forget the legal term, but basically flower's approved, but it's not available. So what some of the dispensaries, a couple of the dispensaries have done, they have oh gosh, what's it called? They have a big smoking apparatus where you actually take a cup of flour and you stick it down in there, and that's the way you're able to ingest it. Okay, so, you know, flour is available, but it's only available in that little cup, which, you know, I've had somebody, I don't want to hear anymore, but, you know, I've heard, you can pull that cup open. Okay, well, you know, that's not the idea behind it. But roundabout, they asked the question, okay, I've got patients who always smoked. Remember I told you about the Willie Nelsons that come in? Okay.
Yes.
Well, the Willie Nelsons were getting flour somewhere on the street, right?
Right.
Well, many of them have now gone to the vape. And I had one, and now I'm asking, hey, are you telling, because it's come up a couple of times. I had one patient that said, hey, you know what? I used to have a smoker's cough every morning, smoked pot my whole life. He said, I used to have a smoker's cough every morning. Now that I've gone to this vape, I don't have that cough in the morning. Okay, so I don't know if it's 7 times stronger than a cigarette. I have no clue. Okay, but I have heard that. My God, I heard that when I was, I heard that when I was 15 years old. So that, I don't know if that's a rumor that's been around there forever. I don't know that answer. But I will tell you, I've had patients who have gone from regular smoking to vaping that no longer have smoker's cough. Okay, so, nothing scientific except, that's where they're going with it. So it's definitely much more harmful than the vape. Definitely much more harmful than edibles. If it were my preference, I would rather see all of our patients ingest it orally. But sometimes that's not the case. For example, I encourage a patient to keep the 12.5 to 1 CBD to THC, which is the highest ratio difference, if they have, strong anxiety. Because especially the ones that are trying to treat the chronic pain and the anxiety, you get a little too much THC, now you've got anxiety. I encourage them to have that vape pen, to hit that vape pen, because it'll take care of that anxiety real quick in 5 to 10 minutes. Where if you were ingesting it orally, it's going to take an hour to 2 hours to kick in. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So it may be more harmful for you. I believe it's less harmful than the actual smoking, but I don't have anything scientific to prove that.
And I lied. I am going to ask you one more question,
Sure.
and I think it's an important question. Cost. How expensive is it to go through the process of getting a medical card, and then how expensive is it to actually get the medical marijuana itself?
Okay. To get the card, patients, what they do is I encourage them to go to our website. Most folks don't have their medical records. And it's easier for us to obtain the medical records from your physician because, from physician to physician, they give the courtesy of that. If I went to my doctor and said, I want my medical records, they're probably going to charge me. But if I call them as a physician group and say, I want the records, there's no charge. So I encourage folks to first go on my website and fill out the online medical release form. They want to come to us. Okay. We take that online form, we submit it to their doctor. Once we get the records back, we call and ask them to come in and see our doctor. It's $250 for the initial visit, okay? And then our patients come every 90 days, and it's $150 for the follow-up. So I try to tell our patients it's $50 a month to budget for your medical marijuana card with us. Now, once you get the card, you're able to go into the dispensary. The good news is our fourth one just opened up last week. There was just 2 in town for a long time. The third one opened up a month ago. The fourth one opened up last week. So now you're seeing some very competitive pricing. Most patients are using probably 40, 50 bucks every couple of weeks. So about $100 a month is what most of them are telling me that they're spending in product at the dispensary. And I expect that number to go down because they're getting more and more competitive. You know, the vape pen that used to be only 60 bucks at True Leaves, now 25 bucks at Surterra. So they're just really getting much more competitive on the products.
That's good, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good for everyone. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I do want to give you an opportunity to tell where people can find you, where your practice is, and your website and all that good stuff. How can they get in touch with you?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're located pretty close to downtown off of Beaver Street. If you know where Beaver and Myrtle is, that's the vicinity we're in. Our website, well, obviously the name of the company is Compassionate Alternative Care. Our website is compaltcare.com. And then if you Google medical marijuana, Dr. Jacksonville, I think we're at the top of the Google list these days. So if you get lost, you can find us that way too. Number is 904-265-0344. And we'd love to have you as a patient.
Thank you so much for being here. And I will post that link to their site with this video as well. Thank y'all for being with us today. It was a pleasure as usual, and we'll see you next week. Bye.